side of the moon. The doctors say that they must operate soon. But there's no knowing what they'll find when they open up the wound. I will meet you on the other side of the moon. Bottom of the sea. We will lie inside the ocean and ski. Our friend the Arab will guide us while we dream. I will meet you at the bottom of the sea.
Welcome to the Friends of Dan Music Podcast. I'm Dan Miles. You've been listening to the unmistakable sound of guitarist Robin Trower. That was Lady Love from his classic Bridge of Sighs album, which celebrates its 40th anniversary this year. It's one of my all-time favorite bass lines, and a song that definitely does not need more cowbell. And it's just the right amount. Before we get him on the line, I want to give you a little background information. In 1962, while still a teenager, he formed a band called the Paramounts, which had some modest success in 1964 with their cover of Lieber and Stoller's Poison Ivy, which peaked at number 35 on the UK singles charts. The Paramounts were respected contemporaries with all the other early 60s English artists like the Animals, the Kinks, the Who, the Spencer Davis Group, and of course, the Beatles. The Rolling Stones were particularly fond of them, often including them on the bill at their live shows and using their connections to help them get a record deal. After they disbanded in 1966, Trower formed a band called The Jam, while the keyboard player, Gary Brooker, formed Procol Harum. After A Wider Shade of Pale became a monster hit in 1967, Brooker enlisted Trower to join the band on tour, and he ended up staying with them for 4 years, appearing on 5 of their albums. On their 1971 album Broken Barricades, Procol Harum's lyricist Keith Reed wanted to pay tribute to the recently departed Jimi Hendrix, so he gave Trower his lyrics and asked him to write some appropriate music for them. The resulting track, Song for a Dreamer, which I played a sample of at the beginning of the podcast, is a composition which Trower identifies as the precise moment where he found his voice, both as a guitarist and a writer. Inspired to continue down this guitar-centric path, he soon realized there wasn't sufficient room for it within the structure of Procol Harum, so he left to form a new band called Jude, with original Jethro Tull drummer Clive Bunker, Scottish vocalist Frankie Miller, and Miller's friend James Dewar on bass. Unfortunately, that band never really got off the ground, so Trower decided to make a go of it as a solo artist. In 1973, he formed the Robin Trower Band, retaining James Dewar on bass and assigning him lead vocal duties. Drummer Reg Isidore completed the trio. Trower abandoned the Gibson guitars he'd been playing with Procol Harum at this point and switched to the Fender Stratocaster, which quickly became an integral part of his signature sound. In 1973, he released Twice Removed from Yesterday, which became the first in a series of 5 consecutive gold records, which made him a star in the United States. Though he's never quite matched the commercial success of his classic 70s work, he's continued to release great albums to this day, the most recent being Roots and Branches, which combines cover versions of songs that inspired him in his early years with some newer original material, with the covers being the roots and the originals being the branches in the tree analogy. Before we get him on the line, let's listen to a track from Roots and Branches. This one definitely qualifies as a root.
Born under a bad sign, I've been down since I began to crawl. If it wasn't for bad luck, I wouldn't have no luck at all. Hard luck and trouble been my only friend. I've been on my own ever since I was 10. Born under a bad sign, I've been down since I began to crawl. If it wasn't for bad luck, I wouldn't have no luck at all. Never learned to read, don't know how to write. My whole life has been one long fight. Born under a bad sign, I've been down since I began to crawl. If it wasn't for bad luck, I wouldn't have no luck at all.
Joining me on the phone from Hampshire, England, is Robin Trower. Welcome.
Thank you very much. Nice to be with you.
Nice to have you. Well, we just heard your version of Albert King's Born Under a Bad Sign. In the liner notes for Roots and Branches, you indicate that you wanted to cover some of your old favorites, but you didn't think there would be enough to fill an album, so you decided to supplement it with originals, which are the branches. Did you mean that you didn't think you could come up with enough arrangement ideas to put a twist and a spin on the older tunes?
That's right. I had about a dozen songs that I was thinking about, doing a new version of, but the ones that made it onto the CD are really the only ones I could come up with what I would call a fresh take on those old songs.
Yeah, it's fun for me because when I listen to an album, I don't read the liner notes. First time through, I just listen. So when you went into Hound Dog, I had no idea until the vocals came in that that's what the tune was.
All right.
In addition to Albert King, there are also titles associated with B.B. King, Howlin' Wolf, Willie Dixon, Big Mama Thornton, Arthur Big Boy Crudup, and Elvis Presley. So is this material just a general representation of the music that influenced you, or do you associate these particular songs with any personal milestones?
No, I think really it started off with I had a great guitar riff that I came up with for Hound Dog, and then I started to think about other songs, maybe that I could do a covers album. But really, these are just a few of the songs that have stuck with me, and in other words, they're in my head.
Yeah.
And I made sure when I was getting ready to come up with arrangements that I didn't listen to the originals so that I wouldn't be too influenced. It's just the top line I've kept, really.
Well, that's interesting. Well, there are well-known songs that have influenced us all, really. And I do appreciate the fact that they weren't note-for-note covers. You did put your own spin on it. One of my favorite tracks on the album includes two elements that I don't normally associate with your style. That would be keyboards and call and response background vocals. So it's interesting to hear your playing in that context. This is the Ray Charles composition, I Believe to My Soul. What led you to choose that one?
I think it's always been one of my favorite. Well, I think it probably is my favorite Ray Charles song, and it's just a great one for guitar because the mood of it. I can step out nicely and quite subtly in that kind of piece of music.
Oh, I do. I like how your guitar solo is delivered in the same spirit as the lead vocal. It's laid back and expressive and sensual instead of overblown and flashy.
Well, that's a place I like to be, but it's quite hard to get in stuff that you can play like that on.
I understand. Well, I want to go ahead and spin that one for the listeners. From its Roots and Branches CD, here's my guest Robin Trower's tasteful rendition of the 1961 Ray Charles composition, I Believe to My Soul.
Days, and it won't be long. You're gonna look for me, and I'll be gone. 'Cause I believe, I believe to my soul right now. I believe trying to make a fool of me. We're going around here with your head so hard. I think I'm about to lose my mind. 'Cause I believe to my soul right now. I believe you're trying to make a fool of me. were sleeping, I heard you say, oh Johnny, that's when I start riding to pray, 'cause I believe, yes, I believe through my soul right now. I believe you're trying to make a fool of me.
Well, that's obviously a tremendous recording. I want to get back to Roots and Branches in a minute, but first let's take it back to the 1970s. I first became aware of you in 1978 when a more experienced guitarist I was forming a band with was giving me the proper education, and he told me that Robin Trower Live was something I definitely needed to have. So I actually became familiar with the live versions of those tunes well before I heard the studio versions. There was a period in the 70s when a lot of great live albums were coming out. When I listen to most of them from today's perspective, I find it to be mainly a nostalgic experience. But in your case, the music still sounds so fresh and vital to me that I can listen to it not for the sake of nostalgia, but for my own personal modern enjoyment. So would you attribute that to possibly having dug a little deeper emotionally than some of your contemporaries?
Well, that's not for me to say, is it? But obviously, the main driving force behind whatever music I'm playing and trying to create is that it has a certain amount of powerful soulfulness. You don't always get there, but that is what I'm trying to achieve with every song I come up with.
Sure. I'm just saying, as if I just put on Day of the Eagle or something, I get the same rush from it now that I did as a teenager. It just could have come out last week. I like it just as much if it had. Where if I listen to an old Ted Nugent song, or Ted Nugent, Pat Travers, UFO, Blue Oyster Cult, Foghat, Johnny Winter. There were a lot of great live albums that came out in the 70s. Yours was among them, but like you said, you seem to be putting an emphasis on the music and the emotion more than, let's say, you weren't swinging around on a vine in a loincloth. Let's say.
Well, I did think about it, but somebody had already done it. No, I think the people that you've mentioned are more sort of rock artists, aren't they? Whereas I think my background and what I was trying to sort of bring into my music was much more R&B and blues and stuff.
Well, that's true. Not only your guitar playing, but in the vocals of James Dewar. He wasn't a rock and roll screamer. He was, like you say, he was an R&B soulful kind of guy, which was a lovely compliment, your guitar and his voice, and that's why those things are so classic.
Yeah, definitely. He was great singer.
I'm wondering, when you write music, do you ever do it with your guitar just in your lap, unplugged, or do you always run it through the full rig with the effects and the controlled feedback, because that seems so integral to your sound?
Actually, when I'm writing, I do play electric guitar, but just very quietly through an amp, with no effects or anything, just
wow.
Because you're trying to create music. The sound, you choose the sound that you want to use on the guitar after you've created the music. Really, that you come up with a sound that suits the piece.
I'm not surprised to hear you answer that way, but I could also imagine that you want to have. In other words, as you're playing quietly, you can envision how it's going to be when it's done.
It's definitely in your head, already when you start coming up with ideas.
And when you're in the studio working on an album, do you try to get things in the fewest possible takes, or do you like to really take your time and hone it?
Well, on Roots and Branches, I really took my time, and that's the first album I haven't put down, like the band live, as it were. I put down the guitar and vocal first, and then added bass and drums. I wanted to make sure I was happy with all the parts that everybody was playing, so I came up with the bass riffs, and I built it up, really, in that way. And but in terms of the final guitar take, I mean, I did like to try and get it in one or two takes.
Yeah, so it doesn't start to get stale for you.
No, you're still trying to achieve a live, happening.
Yeah.
Vibe to it, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, you're much better at that than most of us. A lot of players tend to bend strings in one particular sort of distinctive and identifiable way, but I've noticed that you employ a variety of string bending techniques, and you'll often incorporate more than one of them into a single musical phrase. Is that something you specifically intend to do, or has it just become a part of your musical vocabulary and it's more dictated by emotion?
I think it's a bit of each. I think, you're always looking for new ways of expressing. The different bends and the different speeds of vibrato have different feelings for me.
Mm-hmm.
When I'm playing leads, I'm just sort of I'm not really thinking about it in those sort of terms. That's
Sure.
more to do with when I'm sitting at home playing for my own amusement or practicing. You come up with little technical techniques.
Yeah.
That you like, that maybe you can slip into something where you're free-flowing.
Yeah, I imagine it would have to be a combination of the two. Because obviously there's a deliberate quality to any musician performing, and there's also those spontaneous moments where you do things and you go, oh, I didn't know I could do that. You hadn't consciously thought of it, you just do it spontaneously. And I see a combination of both.
With my leads, I'm trying to create a melody as I go. One thing has to follow on from another, though you haven't worked it out, if you know what I mean.
I do. Yeah, there's definitely similar to Jeff Beck, there's definitely a singing quality to your guitar playing. Too many guitar players just get so focused on emphasizing speed and demonstrating their manual dexterity, they lose track of this idea of actually trying to communicate something with their music. It's just like a race to the finish line.
Well, I think, because my big influences are, the blues guitar players and Jimi Hendrix, and they're all playing emotion first, technique second.
Well, as I said, in 1978, when my friend told me to get that album, feel is definitely what I picked up on when I first heard your work. You were obviously making a concerted effort to put as much feel as possible into every note with nothing going to waste.
Well, as I say, I had great teachers, B.B. King and people like that.